I recently played through new Pokémon Snap, and during that playthrough I was quite critical about some of the mechanics. I found I was often comparing things back to Pokémon Snap for the Nintendo 64 when making criticisms, so I also went and played that game again to try and find out if those criticisms were grounded or if they were coming from a place of nostalgia. Let's dig into it a bit, but before I do, just a couple of notes. 1. I'll refer to the games as New Snap and Snap 64 to try and avoid confusion. 2. This video is entirely my opinion, so don't think that I'm claiming to be correct about anything or that I'm telling you what to think. It's perfectly fine to disagree with anything or everything that I say here. 3. There will be spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. Snap 64 didn't really have any story to it. You play as Todd, who is Professor Oak's research assistant, and you document Pokémon around Pokémon Island. This works quite well with the way the game is set up, as there really isn't much to it beyond taking those pictures. In New Snap, there is an attempt at inserting a story into the game's progression. You meet new characters, discover more lore around the Lentor region as you complete each area, and then this information guides you towards the final level and legendary Pokémon. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but with the way the game plays, the story does seem quite irrelevant at times. Something I noticed when I watched another player was that they never uncovered a cutscene which seemed vital to finding the final level, but the level is unlocked anyway. Of course, the story is pretty predictable and has the obligatory main character just loves Pokémon ending, but it's not an unwelcome addition on the whole. I do think it could have been used to drive progression a bit more, but I'll touch on that later. New Snap adds some more interactive tutorials compared to the mostly laissez-faire attitude that was present in Snap 64. I can understand the value in having tutorials for new items and mechanics, but I personally felt they were just a little too slow and too intrusive in New Snap. I would have appreciated an option to end each tutorial early or after completing the demonstrated mechanic once or twice. Even better, they could have been an opt-out feature. The general gameplay is somewhat similar between both games. You follow a set path while aiming your camera and taking pictures, and will unlock various items to interact with Pokémon along the way. There are apples, a flute, Pestables in Snap 64, and Illumina Orbs in New Snap, and New Snap also has a scan feature which will alert you to objects of interest, alternate paths, and some Pokémon might react to its usage when nearby. In New Snap, the focus of the camera can move independently of the frame, and the sensitivity can be modified in the game settings, which can make it easier to line up photos using both joysticks rather than only one with a fixed sensitivity like in Snap 64. It's also possible to use motion controls, though I personally didn't like the feel of them as much as I hoped. Another good addition is the ability to take photos without holding a Z button to zoom in, which wasn't possible in Snap 64. The apples work basically the same between the games, being a way to lure some Pokémon closer, or get them in a different pose, or to strike Pokémon for a reaction. There's really not much more to say about them. The flutes also have a similar function, causing a reaction from select Pokémon in each level. Again, not much to say. Pestables and Illumina Orbs are similar but not quite counterparts. You throw them, they burst on impact. The Pestables in Snap 64 would generally knock a Pokémon out or act like an attack, but Illumina Orbs don't normally have much of an effect when used on Pokémon. They are more effective when used to activate Crystabloom flowers, which can trigger unique Pokémon behaviours. The new scan function is a nice addition, though it doesn't do much meaningful other than unlocking some alternate routes in levels. Alternate routes within a level are a good thing, of course, and something that was lacking in Snap 64. A lot of scannable objects can have their pictures taken and saved in the album, but these objects don't seem to be necessary for anything other than the crystal bloom photos. It would have been nice to see these put to greater use, or to have Pokémon signs like in Snap 64. Unfortunately, I think this might be where most of the praise I have for New Snap ends. Let's talk about the not so good parts. After finishing a level, photos of each Pokémon can be submitted to the professor to review. This menu is a lot cleaner than in Snap 64, but it has one huge problem. You can submit only one picture of any given species at a time, which was perfectly fine in Snap 64, but New Snap has 4 different star ratings for each Pokémon species based upon the action they are performing in the photo. Why is this a problem? Because this means there are 4 possible pictures for each species to submit, but you can only submit 1 per attempt at the level. That's right, you have to play a level at least 4 times to get all of these photos, essentially quadrupling the number of photos required for completion and limiting the experience you gain from each playthrough, in turn slowing your progression through the game. This is absolutely the worst thing about this game. As mentioned before, you have various items to use along the courses. However, something that feels like a huge loss from Snap 64 is the reduced interactivity between your items and the Pokémon. For example, there were various spots in Snap 64 where you could cause Pokémon to evolve by using items in the correct way, or trigger in-level progression through interaction with a specific Pokémon. Progression. Progression was one of my biggest issues with New Snap, as it just felt so slow. There were several instances where I really didn't know what my goal was supposed to be, and it felt like there was too much grinding involved when trying to unlock new levels. One of the issues behind this is that each level now has its own experience points, while they were global in Snap 64. This makes some sense considering that you unlock new variations on each level when enough experience is gained, but when used as a mechanic of progression through the main game, it only serves to add padding and slow things down. Additionally, the Neo 1 seems to move noticeably slower than the Zero 1 did, and this for me makes the levels quite tedious to play, as it's almost always necessary to play through each one multiple times. There is a boost function, but this is only unlocked so late in the game that it felt almost pointless. Those earlier levels where you missed a picture of something important near the end? Yeah, you better believe you have to sit through the whole level to see something that's on screen for 2 seconds. The Illumina orbs had to be unlocked separately in each area, which made some sense in-game, but again makes progress slow and makes each area feel very formulaic. Play once or twice, unlock a level variant, unlock Illumina orbs, play a few times again, then face the area boss. These boss-like Illumina Pokémon were somewhat underwhelming, generally being slow levels where you throw things until the target Pokémon enters the Illumina state and then you snap a photo. Snap 64 had some events within its courses that would unlock new ones when activated, causing the electrode to explode in the caves, for example. New Snap doesn't do things like this, which was quite disappointing really. There could have been more progression options tied to scanning and getting photos of certain interesting objects other than the crystal blooms, like the wall paintings depicting the Illumina Pokémon or something similar that could have been placed throughout the levels as clues leading to the next area, or a series of clues necessary to discover the final island, like the Pokémon signs in Snap 64. In general, Snap 64 just lets you get on with things at a nice pace, unlocking new items as you go and not having to do a whole lot of replaying of levels without having gained anything between trips. You could argue that the fast progression made the game too short, but I really felt that New Snap was at times more padding than actual content, so the slower progression actually hindered my enjoyment of the game. New Snap is not a bad game overall. It's relaxed, the environments look great, and if you have a lot of free time, I think it would be pretty great to just chill out with. For me, it was too slow, and I struggled to keep my interest at several points during my playthrough. I certainly think that the progression should have been faster, and the boost function should have been available much earlier in the game at the very least. There is more to do in the post-game though, which is good if you didn't lose interest during the main game. We have new characters who sadly don't really do anything, a new story which is largely irrelevant to the gameplay and wouldn't really change anything were it absent from the game. Todd from Snap 64 makes a return, but we don't see him from that camera angle, for better or worse. I think some of the need of grinding would be reduced if it were possible to submit multiple star ratings for each species at a time, and this would by itself go a long way to improving the game. Alongside that, I would have liked to see more interactive elements with Pokémon in the courses, or more detective type work involved in the game's progression. I would rate New Snap as a 5 out of 10. It's good enough, but it doesn't hit the spot for me, and I'm struggling to see any way I'll be interested enough to do much more in the post-game, as I just don't really have the amount of free time I feel I would need to actually get into it. For me, it was equal parts good and bad, and I personally just prefer some of the mechanics and the pacing from Snap 64 much more so than New Snap. So this was my review / comparison, or whatever you want to call it, of these Pokémon Snap games. If you have anything to add, feel free to let me know in the comments. I know I'm going to have missed things, just because I couldn't get around to completing this video immediately after playing the games. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future content. For now, that's all, so thanks for watching, and see you in a future video.